All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Before we get started, I just want to say a big thank you to all of you. I was reflecting on yesterday's conversations and the brands that we had in the room and the conversations and the content. And it's just so good to be back live and to be here with all of you. And this is why we're coming back live. So thank you for making this time, spending it with Audacy. We were just so thrilled to have you. The other thing I was thinking about was the conversations yesterday, and there were some themes that went through the conversations, and one of them was connection. And we were all talking about whatever brand we represented, whatever platform we were from, it was about making those connections with consumers. Community was another theme that we talked about, and building community and creating those connections at scale, and using authentic creative to do that. Now, I'm biased, and because I work at Audacy, maybe it's because you're all here at Audacy, but I think audio is the ultimate medium to deliver on that. And I'm going to give you 4 reasons why, and then I'm going to prove it. And I'm not going to prove it. I'm going to let somebody else prove it. But the 4 reasons are, first, audio is the ultimate companion medium. It can be with you. You can actively engage in audio when you're actively doing something else, when you're running, when you're cooking, when you're driving, when you're laying with your eyes closed, just finding your breath. And without getting too sciencey on everybody, when you're deeply engaged with audio and really listening to it, your brain releases a chemical composition of serotonin and oxytocin in the same composition that gets released when you get a hug from somebody you love. And that's why audio has this effect over us. So that's one reason. It's also ubiquitous, right? It can be with you wherever you want to go. It's in your home through your smart speakers. It's in your car and your radio. It's in your ears on your phone. Wherever you are, it can be with you. We know the third reason, it's reach and scale. Audio reaches 97% of Americans every single day. But now, with so much audio going onto the stream, podcasts, and the ability to give real attribution to over-the-air radio, there is precision now. So the value proposition is reach, scale, and precision. I'm gonna prove it to you. So we have a treat this morning. As I was talking about our stations yesterday, this cluster in Chicago is just so impressive. And I'm biased because I'm a sports fan, but I think the Score is it's just such an amazing station in this cluster. And if you look at the Score, it's one of the best sports stations in the entire country. Dave Haugh is co-host of the morning show. Dave, for those who are Chicagoans, he's a local legend. He is the voice of Chicago sports. He's been doing it for a long time. He's going to come up here. We're going to have a conversation to start the day for about 20 minutes. So I don't want to waste any more time with an opening soliloquy. I'd rather bring up Dave and have a great conversation. So please welcome Dave Haugh to the stage. Dave.
It's great having me.
All right.
Good morning.
So
there we go.
I don't know if everyone stayed up late last night, but there were some good games on last night.
I stayed up just as late as I needed to.
Right. The Blues just came back.
Well, we don't talk hockey here. No, the hockey game was awesome.
Yeah.
Because they were down 3 goals. They come back. They win in overtime. Sox ended late. Cubs not as late. But right after we're conditioned now, after the last out, you go to bed.
Got it.
You can't stick around because you have to get up early to come in.
What time do you get up?
I get up every day about 3. Yeah, about 3. We're on the air at 5. And you do a lot of catch up in between 3 and 5, just so you don't want to go on the air unprepared. But yeah, it's just changing from, and we'll talk about this, but going from being a sports writer where you end up being done around 1 or 2 in the morning some nights.
Yeah.
And then getting up at 3. Yeah, it's an adjustment, but it's a good one.
So Dave and I prep, like as you all do for your sessions. I'm going to go off script first question here, because now you've got me. I'm curious. So you get up at 3, like what's the routine to get from out of bed, feet hitting the ground, to in front of the mic to millions of people?
Right. That's a good question. So my commute is about 45 minutes, and it's one where you do a lot of listening to like podcasts on the way to kind of prepare. You have a routine where you eat as little as possible because you don't have a lot of time. You get here, and once I get here, then I catch up on I'll watch highlights. I'll read post-game reports. I'll do all the research like if I were writing about it, because that's my training kind of as a writer. And then you think about, okay, then you just hit the highlights. So you know what you want to talk about. And what we do is in playing the hits, you're not going to have to worry about, well, who moved the runner from second over from second and in the seventh inning. You need to know more about the who said what after the game and why will people be talking about that this morning? Why is it worth your time?
So, and there's just so much emotion with sports, probably more than anything else. Like, are you prepping the conversation for the whole show, or are you just like thinking in your mind, these are the topics I've
Well, by now,
ahead?
I'll know, we all know in the morning show kind of what resonates with Chicago sports fans.
Yeah.
You know that it's not going to be some, what about that great pitching change in the seventh inning? It's going to be something about why did he, what happened to the pitcher who walked off the mound, Joe Kelly for the Sox, holding his hamstring last night in the eighth inning. What does that mean not only to last night, but what does that mean to this season? And what does that mean to the $8 million they paid him to come here to pitch? And, all these big picture implications, everything that has a small effect on that night's game could have a big picture implication. And it's our job to kind of let people know what we think the big picture implications are of all those little moves.
Got it. So I started in the middle. Let's
All
go
right.
back to the top. Ladies and gentlemen, Dave Haugh. So David, tell us your story. Tell us, like, you played football at Ball State, you're a journalist, and now you're the voice of Chicago sports.
So I'm here because I heard you talking earlier. I believe in audio. Okay. I believe in audio, and I believe this was a direction my career needed to go. I had dabbled in it. I'd worked part-time. We did some things, but I was at the Chicago Tribune for 17 years. I was a lead columnist for the last 10 at the Tribune that I spent there. And it was my dream job. I grew up in North Judson, Indiana, small town, Northwest Indiana, 1,200 people, graduating class 99, loved being proud of where I'm from. But I always wanted to work at the Chicago Tribune. I wanted to be the lead columnist at the Tribune, and I was, and I had that job. And then things changed in the newspaper industry. It wasn't as powerful, or you couldn't reach as many people. And I had an opportunity here at the Score, and it just was 4 years ago, and it was great. And I believed in audio, and I wanted to make that move. And I wanted to make that move because it was time to do it for me. And I've always been passionate combining sports. And I'm a writer. I'm a writer on the radio, but I'm also a writer now who I feel more like an audio guy, right? So going back even further, I did play college football at Ball State. I came from a small town. I went to Ball State. I played in the Mid-American Conference, and I was one of those guys that had a pretty good college career. You kind of toy with the idea of my senior year. I had some people, some agents saying, oh, you can get your tryout here or there. But once I knew I was headed to journalism, it was either going to be grad school or sign with an agent that said they could get me a tryout. And we were on national television, the California Raisin Bowl. And I chased a wide receiver into the end zone for the last 20 yards on ESPN. And I knew at that moment I was destined for journalism.
There you go. That's great. That's an awesome story. So, we were going to play, we only have 20 minutes with you, and I wanted to make sure we got every second of time with you, David. And so we didn't do like the score. We have Mitch and the team put together an awesome promo piece, but what is it about the score? There's sports stations in every market. What makes the score so special?
I think the audience is unique. I think the Chicago sports fan, the prototypical Chicago sports fan, is as passionate as any sports city's fandom that you can imagine. So I think what happened here over time, the 30 years that the Score has been here, those are relationships. It's almost like a family within a family. And so that's the audience. And what happens is you have that unique connection, and you have that unique connection with the audience that makes you crazy sometimes when they're calling you and they're challenging you. It makes you feel good sometimes when they're calling you and supporting you. And it also makes you sometimes feel connected in a way where you're going through difficult times. I can think of one example, here in Chicago, I had a unique relationship with Les Grobstein, who was a legend. Les passed away, and it was I was on the air when Mitch Rosen, brand manager, told us what had happened, and we had to deal with Les, who was a legend, passing away, and telling the audience. And you know what? That day was as memorable of a day as I've had since coming to the Score, because of the way that the audience responded to it, calling in with their stories, helping us through that. And I think that it really struck me in that moment, in those 4 hours of that show, and that week, just the value and the power of an audience in helping process these human emotions. And this, you don't think of things that way when you don't work here or if you don't part of it, but the audience engagement, I think, really was unique in that time. And I think it makes the Score something special.
You hit on something that you reminded me of something. Another attribute of audio is like, it is there in the moments that matter most. Just like that, whether they're great moments or they're hard moments, audio is right there and it's the go-to. So our audience, we have brands out here, we have platforms out here, and by the way, there's hundreds more on a stream right now listening to us and watching us. What do you think makes great content? You're in the content business, right? You're a storyteller. What makes great content?
I'm a storyteller, and I always look at it. My training is as a writer, as a columnist, as a journalist. So what makes great content? We come in every morning, and I think, I can complain or sound like, boy, getting up at 3 a.m. is drudgery. I love it. I love it because we get the first shot. And so we come in here and we're on the air at 5. And the way that I view it, content-wise, is that we are the virtual front page for Chicago sports. And when you think of it that way, okay, what is the front page of your sports section? The way, the traditional sort of way that I grew up thinking about news and news judgment. What's the screaming headline? What are the other 4 stories? There's typically going to be 4 or 5 things each day that you feel like you have to, content-wise, address thoroughly, fairly, and in a way that serves the public's interest. So you think of it that way. Content-wise, you wake up every morning, you go through what happened, what was said, what else is going on around Chicago, because that matters too. You don't want to have your head in the sand and be so insular that or provincial that you ignore what Steve Kerr said, pounding the fist about the tragedy, or what somebody else said, what happened in the playoff game with in overtime. You've got to be conscious of all those things, but content-wise, you figure out what is your screaming headline, what's your 60-point headline, what's the secondary story, what are the other stories that help fill it out, and you hope to have a variety without missing the main point. And I think that's the value, and that's the challenge, and that's the fun of it, is that you come in every day and you sort of establish a pecking order or a hierarchy of the news stories. And really what happens is that by design or just by a habit, people throughout the day sort of follow your lead. I loved that when I was writing columns, and I like it even more now that, you're providing, the outline maybe for the sports conversation. You're steering the discussion as you get there every morning, beginning at 5 o'clock.
I got to go back to the first question. So you finish the show, you're spending some time with us. Now, what's the rest of your day look like?
Well, it always depends, but I think what you want to do is you kind of decompress a little bit. When I work out, what I do is I listen to the Audacy app. I work out or I'll run. And
Audacy.
And it's great when you can go through it. I'll maybe listen to some things I might have missed. I also just keep track of things, and you want to kind of, I like to continue to write. I would like to write a little bit more for our website, because I do think that there's some value in that. And you just kind of keep up on whatever games. Today, the Cubs have a day game. The Sox play tonight, and you kind of space it out. You can't watch every pitch of every game. Can't watch every possession of every basketball game. I'm a hockey guy. I like hockey. My son plays hockey, and I love football. So I think you just balance it all. You try to make sure you don't miss anything.
That's great. When you think about brands, because we're an ad-supported platform, what would you advise brands to do as they want to come into audio and bring their brands in really meaningful ways, not just 30-second spots, but whether it's have you talk about them or have them integrated into the content? What would you say to a brand?
That's a good question. And it's something that I've really been curious about, because, having a career in newspapers, you don't deal with that a lot. Then you come in here and it's a big part of it because of the way that you have the access to these kind of opportunities. Best example I can give you is like Flag and Anthem, for example, the brand that comes in and they've used us Mully and I in the morning, and they have clothed us. So we're talking about these shirts that we're wearing or these pants that we're wearing and all these things. And it becomes sort of a camaraderie with the listener, a camaraderie with each other. And then there's a presence, there's a passion, there's an involvement that, you know, we are actually wearing the clothes. So I think it's about relationships. And I think we were able to develop a relationship. We have a relationship with some of the other brands that we endorse. And I think what it goes back to is the same thing to anything. If you tell a story as a writer, if you tell a story as somebody on the air, you want to basically develop a rapport and a relationship. And I think when you're dealing with these brands and the people who are representing those brands, you want to begin with that relationship, that rapport. And once you have that, then everything else comes more naturally. And that's what you're looking for. You want things to be more natural and less scripted and more authentic and less kind of forced. And I think that's what you're looking for.
That word authenticity, that was a theme through yesterday. You know, there's a responsibility that sits on you and Mully's shoulders. You're a daily habit for millions of people, and the trust that they have in you, the love, and, you know, they get angry at you too, but you are,
you hope so.
Yeah, you want it. I mean, that's, you know, there's nothing like sports radio, but, you know, the authenticity, I think, you know, you have to believe in the brands that you are endorsing, or else it's just not going to land.
You have to. And I think that's the benefit of having, you know, things that you can put your hands on, or people who you can look in the eye to and get what they're meaning, get what they're wanting, and being able to try to deliver the best you can.
Yeah. So I totally agree. So, you know, sports, the other thing about sports is just the emotional roller coaster that can happen. You know, at any play, there is diverging opinions on, or diverging emotions. So for you, just what's been the biggest emotional moment you have been involved in sports?
Well, in sports in general, I think, okay, so I was the columnist for the Chicago Tribune in Game 7 of the World Series in 2016 when the Cubs beat the Indians. All right. So in that moment, I grew up a diehard Cubs fan. But I think when you're a journalist, you kind of suppress that a little bit because you're paid to be objective. Because if I would have been the 12-year-old me in that press box during the 22-minute rain delay, when you have 20 minutes to write 600 words on something somebody's going to pull out of a time capsule in 25 years, you'll be paralyzed with fear, right? So it's different there than, that was probably the biggest moment. That was actually the moment as a columnist, I felt like walked out of the press box that night, it's not going to get any better than this. It's not going to get any better than what I just did, what I just wrote, what I just watched and witnessed and was part of. So that was, from a professional standpoint, maybe the highlight. From a personal standpoint, I think that after that, you think like, all right, then you pivot here and you think, emotions. It's a different emotion when you're on the air, because I think that you don't have to be as controlled, as measured sometimes. And I think that's part of the challenge for me, is to find that balance, because you're right. People will want to hate you. They'll call you up and they'll say, I cannot stand listening to you. I do it every day.
Yeah, totally.
Thanks,
that's a fan.
Exactly.
That's the guy you want.
But you want to, so you want to have that balance, and it's more of an emotional investment. I can let myself be more of a sports fan now than I could be maybe when I was paid to be an objective journalist.
Another sidebar question. I was just thinking about it. When you started as a journalist, like, you're a craftsperson, you're a writer. How has social media changed that? Does it frustrate you? Like, you know, the purity of writing, how it's changed?
Well, it has changed a lot. I mean, certainly, yeah, I'm evaluated now more by 288 characters than I used to be in 1,500 words. And I think what you want to do, whether it's in social media, and I tell this when I talk to classes and I'll talk to anyone, when you're on social media, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever the platform, every time that you tweet and you hit send, or every time you just hit send, you are publishing something under your name, or you're publishing something, or you're broadcasting something for your company. You are amplifying your message, but you represent your company. Don't do it if you're not comfortable with it. Don't do it if it's unprofessional. Don't be somebody that you don't want to be. If I cannot be personal. I don't have that privilege. I don't have that right to be somebody that I'm not on the air in social media. So you want to be consistent every time you go to a platform like that, because that's why I look at it. Yeah, there are negatives, and there are a lot of, I always say that Twitter is where context goes to die, because there's no context in social media, but the positives outweigh the negatives, and the reach that it extends for you individually, for me on the air, for us as a show and as a station, tremendous. So I think when you think of it that way and you look at it that way, I think that you want to accentuate the positives over the possible drawbacks or negatives that it could provide.
It's, I know we're getting to time here, but what's really interesting is you were just sort of talking about yourself, not just as a representative of Audacy or the score or the show, but like Brand David and managing Brand David. And I think there's a takeaway from, audiences here.
That's very important. I think you have to worry about yourself and your reputation. There are a lot of things you can't control in this industry. Everybody knows that, but you can control your effort, your attitude, and to some degree, your reputation about what you want people to, how do they want to view you. So if it's as, the fly off the handle guy or the impulsive guy or whatever, that's fine. Some people are screamers. Some people are whatever it is, you want to be what's true to your own personality, and that becomes your brand, hopefully, or what's true within your, whatever your approach is professionally. And so my approach maybe has changed subtly since I went from print or digital to audio, but I don't think it's changed a great deal. And I think that consistency ends up becoming hopefully part of your brand and part of the message and part of what you're selling, both individually and collectively as a show and as a station.
Awesome. All right, we've got to go. Last question.
Right.
Who's going to win the Super Bowl?
Oh boy. It is May 26th, and you're asking me of a Super Bowl question before training camp. Buffalo Bills.
There you go. And the national title, and the answer is USC, but go ahead.
No, the answer is SEC. Somebody in the SEC, that's a pretty safe bet. I'll go with Alabama.
There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, Dave Haugh, thanks so much.
Thanks.